Okay, so you've seen a typical rib, and unfortunately they all don't all look like that. We have a classification called atypical ribs. So that includes three different types you need to know. The first rib, the second rib, and then floating ribs. So I'm going to go through each one independently, but they'll follow a pretty specific trend that you'll notice. So once again, we still have the posterior and the anterior ends of the ribs. That part hasn't changed. Your head of the rib still located here, very posteriorly. You still have a tubercle. Now connecting the tubercle and the head is still the neck. Okay. Now there just are some iconic features of the first rib I want to talk about. So over top of this first rib, you're going to have a passageway of vessels, and it's kind of hard for you to see, but this is a very smooth area of the bone, and it's a nice little divot. And that's actually for the subclavian artery. It's going to travel right over top of that. And you might notice the bump here separating it. This is also known as the scalene tubercle. And then a little bit more anterior to that, we have another divot right here. And that's actually for the subclavian vein. So this is all running over top. So all these divots and dips are for the superior surface of the bone. And the only landmark left that you want to know is on the anterior end here. It will serve as an attachment point for the subclavius muscle. So that's your first rib. Directly below that, as you probably would assume, you have the second rib. And so once again, we have the posterior end and the anterior end. We're going to do the same thing. We see the tubercle here posteriorly. We see the head of the rib. And connecting those two is the neck. Once again, we have an angle of the rib, that bend. And moving a bit proximally, we see this bump here. This is actually the serratus anterior tubercle. And then that's it for the second rib. And last, and honestly probably least, is a floating rib. So appreciating how small it is. It doesn't have that big broad anterior end you see on every other rib. Notice that? Because this doesn't actually articulate with cartilage at all. It's, in its name, floating. So it still has that posterior segment, which is going to articulate with the spine, and I apparently can't grab it. My goodness. All right, there we go. Let it focus. So it's a bit nuzzed on this model, but this is the facet it will articulate with the spine in. But once again, we do not have that on the anterior surface. So that is your floating rib.